leaving the MTC, it was kind of like a dream, I feel like. And none of it really hit. Got on the bus, drove up to Salt Lake Airport. And even the flight, so we flew from Salt Lake to LA. And even that like whole trip was just like, is this really happening? And then once we were on the plane in LA, we took off and went to Lima from there. One of the missionaries who was in my group said, as we were flying, taking off, get your last look at the United States, because this is the last time we're going to see it for 2 years. And, just looking out the window, like there goes the coast of California, and I'm in a whole other world, and I just no idea what to expect. Landed in Lima, and that was my first experience with Spanish. And I remember we were like walking around, just like getting a sandwich. And somebody asked us what time it was. They asked us in Spanish, and I was with another elder, and we had no clue what had just been said. And we both looked at each other, and then they said it in English. They spoke English. I mean, it all just layered on top of each other. Got to Buenos Aires, and it was super, just chaotic. There's people everywhere. It was loud. I remember, super humid once we got out of the airport. They stuck us in this transport van, and they took us to like a motel. And I remember just looking at the atmosphere. Everything was so much more enclosed, just in Buenos Aires. There were like the roads had lines painted on them to keep lanes, but I feel like they were just more for decoration. Nobody followed anything. Stoplights were like mood lighting. When you were stopped, you just have motorcycles just weaving in and out of stopped traffic, and for me that was just like nuts. I got to this motel, and they were cooking us some food. We crossed paths with the group that was leaving from another mission. I don't remember which one. They were going home. They were talking to us, and they were like, hey, you guys should go outside and do some contacting or whatever. And that was like the last thing I wanted to do at that moment. So they were cooking our food, and we were just in the motel. And me and a couple other missionaries decided we were going to go just take a walk around the block, celebrate our newfound freedom from the MTC. And we walked down, just people and cars everywhere, and it's loud, and dogs. I just remember lots of dogs. But I think the one thing that just really opened my eyes to this is a brand new world was we came up to the corner of this intersection, and in the middle of the road right in front of us was a box on fire, just burning, and nobody was freaking out or anything. It was just there burning, like no big deal. Everyone was just driving by it, walking by it, and there's three of us, Americans, are just looking at this box on fire, like, why is nobody doing anything about this? Yeah, that was pretty shocking to see. That it's just part of life. And then throughout the next 2 years, you just see, it's just how people get rid of garbage. They just burn it, and nobody thinks anything of it. At that motel, I had the best steak I've ever had in my entire life. Not even close. I just remember it was so good. Did that. Got us loaded onto another plane that flew us up to Argentina Resistencia. I was exhausted. Apparently, like during the flight, I fell asleep, and the stewardess came to tried to wake me up and give me some food, and I was just out. They couldn't wake me up. And then when I did wake up, I was like, "Oh, did they bring food yet?" And the missionary was like, "Yeah, they came like an hour ago, and you just wouldn't wake up." So I was pretty tired. I arrived in Resistencia. We stayed with the assistants. One of them was from Honduras, if I remember correctly, and the other one was an American. They took us in. Just remember layers and layers of bunk beds in their apartment. And I went with a pretty big group. There were 25 or so of us, I think. So we all got shoved into all these bunk beds, and woke up at 6 the next morning, had a meeting with the mission president. I was still tired. We were all still just exhausted, so we're all kind of trying to not fall asleep during this meeting. My mission president was an Argentine, and he didn't speak any English. So that was also a trial by fire. The American assistant had to translate a lot of what happened, of what was being said. And then yeah, they split us off into little groups. We went out into the main city there. I was with a small group that was with the assistant from Honduras, and we just went street contacting. And I just remember I was so nervous. I didn't want to say anything because I couldn't understand a word they were saying, and so I had a hard time responding to them. So if I could start a conversation, I was okay. I could speak it, but I couldn't understand it. So if I got the first word in, I felt pretty comfortable. But once they asked a question or they spoke back to me, I was finished. I couldn't keep up very well. My trainer was Argentine, and yeah, he spoke zero English. Like the only word he said, he knew how to say yes, and he pronounced it yes. So I mean, communicating with him was hard. It was really hard. And my first area was in Monte Carlo, which is now in the Posadas mission. They spoke Spanish, but in Argentina, like, they speak a different accent than we were taught here at the MTC. So I mean, I had to deal with the accent, plus the fact that my area was sandwiched in between Brazil and Paraguay. So I got like a mixture of this Argentine Spanish with Portuguese and a language they speak in Paraguay called Guarani. And in that first area, they just kind of mush all three of those together, and that's how they talk. So I have, honestly, my first area, I've never felt so alone in my entire life. I couldn't talk to my trainer. Luckily, there was one member in that first area who was an English teacher, and he spoke pretty good English. So that was a help. However, after like the first week, he's like, "I'm not gonna speak to you in English anymore." He was a return missionary, and he's like, "Okay, you're here. I'm not speaking to you in English, period." And he didn't. He was true to his word. Street contacting. My trainer he eased me into it quite a bit. He took care of most of the. Well, by most, I mean, he did basically all of the street contacts for the first little while. Street contacting wasn't very good. The best way was to find or go to people's homes, because Argentines were a lot more open. They believe in God, and they don't really care what religion you're a part of. Like, if you just say, "Hey, we're representatives of Jesus Christ. We have to share a message," they'll be like, "Oh, come on in. We love hearing about Jesus. We love hearing about the Lord." So that was the best way to do it. It's a little different than going to people's homes here in America. When you go up, you don't go up to their door and knock. You stand off the property and you clap, and then they'll come out and they'll say, "Yeah, come on, you can come on, come on." And they'll either just like set up chairs on the porch, or they'll invite you inside. Yeah, my companion took care of most of that, the street contacting and doing contacts in people's homes. I honestly had no idea how to like start a conversation like that. Just be like, "Hey, I just want to talk to you about Jesus." I mean, it was nerve-wracking for me. Yeah, my companion helped a bit, just easing me into it. He let me, he gave me a couple lines to just kind of throw out there, and once they spoke, he would just take over from there.